So welcome, Melissa. I feel really honored and excited to have you here to share with our community. I don't even have words for who you be for me, and the intertwining of our paths across the ocean. We've only met in the physical one time in Canada, but I feel as if you're with me every day. And so it feels so fitting to talk to you, to share you more with my community. Yeah, I feel as if the work we do is just energetic, shamanic, weaving, artistic, it's all the things. So I'll let you describe how you feel your work is at this point in time. Yeah, firstly, just wanted to totally honor all that you hold.
Deep breaths. It's been such a delicious journey with you. I'm very grateful also for your presence and for your invitation here to even have the possibility to share with whomever receives this video everything that has brought me to this moment of now, pieces of my journey. So what my work is now is really just serving the divine. I feel from the beginning of my journey, it's been a call to service beyond me. Studying to be a bilingual social worker, I was married, had 3 kids at the time. And then my dad unfortunately suffered a stroke in 2009. And that is when my life just completely flipped around. And he did pass 3 years later. And my life was just really never went back to the same. And I found myself in a deep, dark night of the soul process, and then into this deep calling and initiation. I didn't even know things that existed, right, were starting to happen to me. And it was just this deep inner call that almost left me with no choice to do anything but follow, even though I didn't know what that is. Now, kind of almost 14 years of that practice of showing up and disheveling my own healing, I would say what that looks like is being the light, and just being a sovereign light worker and answering the call when I'm asked. And so it takes on many shapes and many forms. Shamanism or shamanistic, however you'd like to say that, and it also through art and journeys and soul retrievals, and I'm either working with art to reach the people or working with individuals or groups or going down to Peru and working with the plant medicine, which has been a big part of my journey, Dr. Wachuma, also known as San Pedro, and just really learning about being the mesa carrier that I am and the medicine woman that I am. But also I would like to say, a bridging of the worlds, right? There was this title label given called chacaruna. So it's a bridge person that connects to the cosmos and brings the messages down to the earth. I feel like that Quechua word has been probably the closest, because each session or each piece or wherever I'm at looks completely different, because we're always creating. When I say we, it's me and the spirit guides, we're always creating in the moment of now, whether I'm the beginning of that seed or the middle or the tail end of something. It takes many shapes and forms.
So beautiful. In Canada, I was thinking before we started talking about the first time we connected and we shared a room in the process that we were in, and it was beautiful. But how would you describe, for me that felt a little bit like an initiation in terms of like what we shared in the way that we began weaving. How would you describe that time?
The whole thing, was just, these words came to me in a art piece that I did. They're coming to me now. A magic carpet ride, a whole new world. We know that song, right, from Aladdin. So to me, that was a full-on magic carpet ride that we were on, and one very much of the synchronicities that I was speaking of. And I'm so grateful, because it's like, for me, you're like a soul sister, a twin sister that I didn't know was missing in my life, and We are always in sync in so many beautiful ways. So, and it also, in my perspective on my side, helped to be a catalyst for me to go through the growth I was going to go through, because you completely understood me with no language, just in presence. So there was no fixing or changing or, we were able to be exactly who we were. And to me, life just planted that gift perfectly. And I get the chills like saying that, because it's like when I'm in Peru or when I'm in these profound experiences that are extremely aligned with the Creator, it feels like a magic carpet ride where there's just an enormous amount of synchronicity, a profound realization, an awareness that you're connected to everything. And this is with the medicine, without the medicine, it's all medicine, right? So it's not even just waiting. Like we weren't on the medicine when we were doing this, right? Like it's real life stuff. When we move the veils, when we get into that deeper heart-centered space and we trust. And trust is a very vulnerable thing. And what I'm learning on my journey is that through working with people, some people's processes are to learn trust with life and faith with life, whereas mine, I feel like that's just been, I have other things I have to learn, patience being one of them, but trust and faith of life. And even in the hardest of times, I've always had this sense that something greater was coming or some awareness, right? And we think it's for the one thing that we're there for. And then in hindsight, I can say it was totally to meet you, forget the rest of the stuff. And a couple others that were there too. What we are is opening the channel. We're just being the open vessel, or the open, vulnerable space of trust to let through the expression of God or the expression of the divine or source, however you want to call that for yourself. And in that moment, 3:00 or so in the morning, the first one that I'm thinking of, it was get up and do this work, and at first it was silent, and then we exchanged together, and then it just kept growing to everyone we kind of touched around that. And then it was with the land of Canada. And, I began my, what we call awakening. I remember one reading I had by one woman, she did like a color picture thing. And she's like, whoa, they said, you really like to play up there, but you need to come down because you to bring the messages, you have to come down, right? And part of what that was my trauma. So my soul was up there playing to keep me safe. And I'm so grateful that I'm even aware to give you that kind of languaging, that is possible, because that has been my understanding of my own saving grace, that God gifted and gifts us all. That trauma, it can't snuff out the light. I just feel that my inner child, now that it has come back through this process of healing and being taught by beautiful teachers and experiences, she just loves these stories, like candy. Like she could just play in them all day. Not the healing aspect of coming back to yourself, not the soul retrieval, but the initiation, the shamanic initiation, that this is who you are. This is what you plant around you, this sweet nectar, right, to gather, to awaken and help. Because if you look up hummingbird, it's all about infinite connection with God. When you have God with you, whether it be on a vacation, that's your choice to be a sovereign servant or servitude or service, whatever the right word is there. Your life is just different. It doesn't mean you don't have challenges. It doesn't mean we don't have learning to do. But what we start to see is us in everything. So when it's outside in, you're like, oh, just coincidentally, these birds are chirping when I'm chirping. Inside out, you realize your movement is creating the movement around. And this is why when we bring that awareness, then we recognize we are that presence in everything that's so the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And then we get to decide. We can reflect on that and say, okay, this is coming forth. What is it here to teach me or to show me? Or because if we don't like it, we have an opportunity for changing that. Mm-hmm. Or continue the victim consciousness, right? We're in a transformational time into visionary consciousness. But what it rests upon is to let go. Even if we're holding on by 3, 4, 5% in an unconscious way to victim consciousness, I hear a lot of healers. They're still holding on to victim consciousness because it's like, if somebody just understood me, or if my work was more known, or if I could just let my normal be their norm, it's like that's victim consciousness still versus an owning of the calling and owning of the power that resides within each one of us. Because who are we serving? We're not, like, I'm not serving you and you're not serving me. So you may or may not like my answers that are coming to fit your plan without the plan, so to speak, right? That my only call to action is the service. So when we're in that deep alignment, we'll say no more, or say yes to things we weren't expecting, or not speak, or speak. Or
that added layer of that in terms of some things I often talk about with, like, your energetic clarity, like being aware of the yeses and the nos and where the energy is traveling and how consciously it's traveling. But you just described it in a much more practical way than I attempt to describe it. I'm normally like, you can just see where the energy is going, But in your response, one of the things that sometimes I hear people talking about is though there's an expectation that awakening is like a one-off situation and then it's sort of done. But there's so many awakenings on all the different aspects of self and all the different parts that we be, and even there's some parts that just refuse to let go of that victim consciousness, and so it's going to receive many activations many times to crack that open.
Because in my own experience, and maybe this will help somebody that's listening, from my own background of trauma, I've had sexual abuse, unfortunately a couple rapes, things like that, physically abused by my stepfather and sexually, there was a mind there, like I'm never good enough, I'm not valuable enough, because of the trauma. And so in this journey, it's been about healing that, calling it back in. But then when you're walking as the healer and you're walking as the shaman and you can see and sense, for me, sometimes it feels like, gosh, I'm just never going to get out of that trauma mind. So I want to explain that all about what that means, because what I come to find out, right? Because it looks like, sounds like, and talks like me. Right? So how would I think it was anybody but me? Mm. And then I was guided to, you have to go to the next level, which is to discern. Because it's not always not your voice, right? The ego is very sly. So the ego will kind of masquerade as God. And there's just this constant calling back to ask, okay, I heard this, I received this. Is this in the light of God? Is this truth? Is this mine? Is this someone else? And you find your own path, you find your own map, your own wording, in my experience.
Yeah, the energy almost becomes, I think after we have a few of those experiences, it's like we can then distinguish when things have happened a few times, and I can hold it easier because I'm like, okay, I've had this texture before, that's clearly not mine. Whereas some of them aren't as clear at certain times because there's a bit more excavation to do in that space, or holding that particular aspect.
Yeah, and I think it's just important for people to know when they're having these experiences.
Totally. Right? We both have a deep connection with South America as well, yet your work also has been largely fueled and awakened through that process. How do you Yeah, what do you want to speak on that? It's both in terms of like the land and the activation that the land has played in, or the temples or the codes or everything, but also, yeah, anything else that wants to come.
My first trip to Peru was 2013, and all again from this synchronistic calling and alignment process. And it was already like a couple years after really hitting the end of my deep 5-year dark night of the soul experience. So I'd already had some experiences of helping people, but still in that state of what is going on. And I'd had this experience with this guy in Wisconsin, in Madison, Wisconsin, where I'd had this out of body experience. It was supposed to be a 20-minute, thing at a holistic fair, just for fun kind of thing. I'd never been to a holistic fair. And, it was supposed to be 20 minutes. It was 2.5 hours. He cried. I cried. I thought he was crying because he saw like the black stuff in my soul or something. I was like, oh God, I've heard him. It was still so new. He was started speaking about Peru, and you're going to go there, and you're going to work with the medicine, you're going to work with the shamans. And mind you, I had no intention or idea to leave the country that I was aware of. I'd been to Mexico once back when I was like 21, and didn't know what the word shaman meant, didn't know what the word medicine meant, and I was almost overwhelmed. And that led me on a call to action. I actually did a 3-day fast to just even understand it. Something was calling me, and I just knew I had to respond. And then naturally, it just kind of, over a couple of years, just progressed into alignment, like I said. And I went down with a group with 17 people, working with people I never knew, heard of, in a country I've never been to. And then we had these experiences with different shamans, with the medicine, and these temples. It was a profound experience of unconditional love. And my words don't even tap close to the experience of it. But in essence, I was like cracked wide open, just full on heart activation. And part of that experience, I was called to work with Roberto Solis. He's at the time as a shaman, now he's kind of moved on to training and learning under being an ayahuasquero, but a medicine man nonetheless, right? And we had a full day experience where he worked with me with the medicine in these different temples. And, I should say that even when I landed there without the medicine, I was crying, right? So that's usually kind of your signal. Something else is going on. There was all this memory, pieces that filled gaps and holes that I didn't even know I had gaps and holes to fill. But when you come out of it feeling so much truth in that we're never broken, like we're always whole, but we create these separations or these illusions of the brokenness through lifetimes. And that became my journey in these temples to, in essence, if you want to call it in a shamanic way, like bring these souls back to me from these lifetimes in this land that I left behind for different traumatic reasons. One time, a vivid recollection of being a woman carrying a baby on my back up the mountain in the snow, and I died with my baby, and you come out, you're just crying, and something feels complete. So there's no logical explanation, wow, we can really be making this stuff up or whatever. But when you feel within your internal being like you've just come home within yourself, you can't make that up. You can't pretend to become back to yourself. Another experience that I had was just from a rock. There was an auspicious thing that happened because I'm looking at it and I realized the masters were coming to her. Because as I'm looking at this rock, like I can see them speaking to her. Like she wasn't alone. She didn't die alone, right? And so that in and of itself started to inform me. So the land, so this temple is like the Akashic record holders of this temple. It's extremely powerful, medicine or not. I've had crazy experiences happen there. In all the temples of the masters literally using the physical manifests to speak to us. But that's how the land informed me. It's how it taught me. It's how the medicine, the plant that grows there, that is, it's how the coca leaf, it's how the Florida water, everything we use, my mesa, from all the stones that have been collected over the trips. One example, in my first trip, I didn't know what a mesa was. I didn't know I was collecting my kuyas, I didn't know. I just was doing it, right? So that's the naiveness of the call. That's the innocence. And we're at Sacsayhuaman, the Puma temple. There, off to the side of that temple is a big Jesus statue, like, in Brazil, the big white, Jesus statue. And I hear this loud voice tell me, you need to go by that Jesus statue. So I started talking with the guide, and he's like, you don't have enough time. I was like, okay. And then I heard it again. And it was like this overwhelming, I have to go. And I was having a lot of, and I've, continue to have lots of experiences like this just awareness and knowing. Peru's kind of magical like that. And so I literally said, well, I'm going to go. And he says, okay, well, here's where the van is. Meet us there because you won't make it back. I literally dart down this steep, long path, curve, go up this steep mountain, running, standing before the Jesus. I'm here. What do you need from me? I heard turn around. And I turn around, and I kid you not, right below my feet, there was a rock in the shape of a puma face. Clear as day. And that became one of my kuyas. Because in shamanic terms, as I was learning later in that trip, you have the condor, the 3 levels, condor, puma, and the serpent. And so what ended up happening is I ended up creating a mesa, I ended up creating these kuyas, and all the pieces that went in it gifted itself to me. They came to me, right? And then I was guided through all that process that I am this mesa carrier, this mesa woman. Magic carpet ride experiences that you can't make up. You enter a portal, you enter a dimension, you enter this, it's like nobody sees you experience, much like Niagara Falls. And that, the other day something came through to me that said, many people glorify being a healer or glorify healing. And I'm like, this path is nothing. There is no glorifying about this path whatsoever. It is oftentimes gut-wrenching, heart activating and pulling from depths you don't even know, other than you have to do it. There's just a call to be of this service like no other. It's not something you can learn in a textbook. It's not something you can get certified for. It's just this call